Hey there, entrepreneur. Welcome back to the Scale to Sell podcast. Today is episode 31, harvesting value from your business before you exit. So, oftentimes people think about the big payday that comes if you get to the point where you're able to sell your business for value. But today we're going to answer an important question for business owners. Why does strategically harvesting value from your business before your exit matter? Steve, why is that a big deal?
Well, one, you're hoping to sell your business in the future for a top dollar, but you don't always know that. And so, one, know your value. We talk about that all the time. But secondly is that we find out in some of the stats you've heard us say before on here, 80% of most business owners' net worth, small business owner net worth is tied up in the value of the business. And if you look at their balance sheet, they could be worth millions of dollars, but in personal assets, they've got minuscule monies. Maybe it's significant. Maybe compared to most people, it's $500,000 or $1 million or more. But if you wait till later on, sometimes things happen. The business loses value, and you can't sell it for what you originally thought. And I've seen that a number of business owners had to pull the businesses back off the market and had to hopefully rebuild that equity. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I always like to be diversified. We'll talk about that and go into more detail. You would not want to have all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, and that's true of even your business. But it's what you know. It's what you know, and it's what you invest in. But that's good if you can eventually harvest it out of there. But why wait? Why wait until the exit? Why wait until the sale? Why not start now?
You bring up a good point. I've heard you use the analogy before about a financial advisor. And as financial advisors, you typically wouldn't recommend someone to have that type of percentage in one particular stock or one particular asset. Again, going back to this idea of diversifying, can you speak more towards that point?
A lot of times people come in and we typically say don't have more than 5% in any one investment. Well, we say the stat all the time. For most of you, vast majority of you have 80% or more of your net worth tied up in your business. So that doesn't sound like a sound strategy, but it's what you know has paid the bills, maybe for decades even. But what is valuable today, a business that's doing well today, you know of a list of Montgomery Ward, not around anymore. Other businesses that had great value but are worth less now. So we try to just make them aware of. Start harvesting equity now and not just waiting to the future.
Again, to your point, you never know what's going to happen. A business that appears good today, seems like it's solid on solid ground, is fit for going on in the future, but economic conditions change, market conditions. What happens if there's a personal issue where you're no longer involved in the business? There's a number of things that could come up that change what was maybe your original intention or what the goal was for that now impacts your ability to get that and maintain your lifestyle and keep living the way that you have been and are continuing to want to live.
It's planning for the future. One, we tell all the time, know the value of your business. I just talked about that on radio shows recently. Know the value of your business annually. Once a year, and we say by going to scaletosell.com/value, our team will get that opinion of value. It's very simple. Scaletosell.com/value will get that value to you. You need to know the value, grow the value, but you also, if you're thinking about an exit at some point in time, whether it's internal, external, what is your income now? What do you need it to be in the future? How much personal assets do you have on hand now separate of the business? And then that will also gauge and tell you how much you need to harvest net of fees and taxes from the business. But again, things can happen to a business, as you mentioned. I can give you I can go through in the top of my head and give you 5 or 10 of them right off the hand. The business was worth a good number, and then things happen, owner burnout, something's happened to a key contract or contracts, or loss of a key personnel, or the health of the owners themselves. And so protect and harvest the value, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, scaletosell.com/value. We describe it this way. We've really simplified the process. We've got a qualified process with who we work with in order to get that value to you. And right now, at least, it's free. So take advantage of that so you can have that benchmark of what is the value, and even see if you're still looking to grow. Great. That'll give you an idea of what are some of the opportunities compared to some others in the industry. Things like that can be a big help there. So 2 words that we often use when we talk about working with business owners and growing your value and knowing it is be strategic and take initiative. Be strategic in the moves that you're making, and take initiative so that you're not waiting until one of these events happens, or wait until the very end when you're trying to sell the business to harvest it. So how can a business owner be strategic and take initiative in harvesting value from the business before they exit?
So after you get the business going, assuming that your business is doing well right now, early on in the business is blood, sweat, and tears. You'll hawk the house, you max out the credit cards. You're not putting money away into a 401k because you're putting it all into the business. That's the way it normally happens. But at some phase of life, you get to the point where you've got some money. The business is humming along, growing perhaps in any way. And now all your money doesn't have to go into the business. So there's things that you can do to start. One, you got to be intentional. You got to think about it. Do I keep putting money into the business, or do I take extra distributions and put them into my 401k or some other investment outside of the value of the business? That automatically you can do that strategically. And that's not like you're going to harvest millions of dollars all at one time, but you're going to start diversifying, directing funds that you would pay yourself and putting them into something, whether it's a 401k, a brokerage account, or something outside of the business. One, you got to be intentional about it without jamming the business up.
Well, and I think too, that lends itself to our conversations that we've had of talking about where the family office, right? Of being smart about the financial moves that you're making. And that's why working with a tax planner and having someone on your team that is able to help advise you about these different moves and making sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself now and in the future is such a key role to help you accomplish those things from Wise perspective. You've got the financial advisor, the tax planner, all coming together to work towards those goals.
What if the tax planner, most of us, myself included, have had tax people we've worked with for sometimes decades, in my case, decades. And we assume because the IRS doesn't show up on our doorstep, send us nasty letters, that we're getting the best advice. Yeah. Best advice for what they know, but what don't they know? My point being, what if a tax planner could save me $20, $30, $50, $100,000 a year, and I could redirect that? So now it's found money, and I could redirect some of that recovered money into a side fund to build for the future. And now my net worth's not 80% of my business. Now over a couple years' time, now it's down to 70% or 60%. Still a large number, more than you would like eventually. But at least you're on a path. So that's one way, found money. Instead of paying cash for everything, well, Steve, I'm debt free. It doesn't always make sense to be debt free. Sometimes it makes sense to finance things to not tie up capital. But then again, I can divert some of that money into other retirement accounts to, again, diversify from the business, not having all my eggs in that basket.
Yeah, just because someone is able to file your taxes for you and make this, submit the statements to the government and do all the tax forms and all of that doesn't mean that they are forward looking in what impact those moves are going to have on you, both in the current year, but in the future as well. And it's again, going back to being strategic, using a good strategy and taking initiative to do it. Those are 2 powerful ways. What are some other things that business owners should consider?
I think about carrying too much inventory. We got sometimes during COVID years or when things were tight to getting, we stocked up on inventory. Not myself, not in this business, of
toilet
course.
paper, right? Yeah,
that one too. We stocked up on COVID. We stocked up on all the toilet paper we can find for whatever unknown reason. But many of you bought inventory, excess inventory, and sometimes they're still carrying more inventory than you need. There's ways to run leaner there, so you're not warehousing a bunch of things, and you can divert some of that. You got to keep, of course, some inventory there, but is there too much? There's, the way we pay for things, as I kind of mentioned. So we do a really good job over the years of finding money that people are unknowingly or unwillingly they just didn't know. And it's how we pay for things sometimes that we could cause us or allow us to recapture some funds, redirect them into a side account of some kind to become diversified, especially if you're that person that's looking at an exit sometime in the not too distant future, whether it's 2025 or 2030 or whenever it might be. Start diversifying now. That way you don't have to harvest as much money. If you get to the point in a few years' time, and almost every business owner thinks their business is worth more than it actually is. Not all the time. Sometimes they undervalue, but a lot of times they'll go, I think my business, I heard, I read, buddy in the same industry said I could get $10 million for the business. Maybe not. What happens if you can't? What happens if you can only harvest $5 million in the future? Well, because you were intentional and started diversifying back in the day, you don't need as much money. It takes some pressure off of you to move forward. And if you do get 10 million, maybe you get 15 million because we can help you scale the business more often. But it just takes pressure off you. And or the more diversified you are, is that I like having access to capital that's not tied up in, it's like having a house. Let's say you have $1 million house and it's paid off. That's great. But what happens if you have an opportunity or an emergency and you need that $1 million? It looks great on a balance sheet, but it's not always liquid. Well, the bank won't loan me any money. It's illiquid. It looks great on a balance sheet, but it's illiquid. I like having access to funds that are liquid for emergencies and opportunities. And the value trapped in the business sometimes is like the value trapped in a home or homes out there, or a warehouse or whatever it might be. So anyway, just being intentional, and these are just some of the talking points there to harvest early.
Well, and a lot of this goes back to the conversation that we have about taking risk off the table. How do you de-risk a situation, whether it's specifically for the business or for your personal finances, where you're moving forward in a way that is you're setting yourself up for success by getting rid of the things that could be potential roadblocks to a successful retirement down the road, a successful exit when you're ready to step out of the business and leave that as part of your legacy. And so I have that picture in my mind of going back to, okay, how do we take risk off the table and how do we set ourselves up for that retirement income going forward?
There's a risk in the business if something happens to the business and it's your largest asset, because your health, an accident to you or a key person, a partner perhaps, a divorce, distress, the things that we've talked about here before, it's a risk. So we not only want to set ourselves up for the future, but we want to take some and reduce that risk by diversification through strategic things that are not going to harm the business. We don't want to do anything that's going to harm the business. We want to enhance the business. And if you're a healthier owner financially, personally, right? And if something happens to the business, you've got enough other assets to ride the wave or the storm out until you recover from it. And many of you that were around in 2008, I remember a business owner at the time. He owned a cabinet shop and he did granite countertops and was killing it. Was doing really well. Remember the housing market in 04, 05, 06, 07. But in 08, he had a line of credit that he used to pay his suppliers and his employees. And the bank froze the line of credit. They had been offering it to him for 30 years, but froze it. And without having diversified some of his assets of what we had started doing a few years prior, he told me without having done that, he would have had to file for bankruptcy. And so things are good now. Economy, people are optimistic heading into the new year, 2025 and beyond. We'll see how it plays out, but you never know what the next storm is. And so that's just another example, not just for the future, but making sure you have access to assets and not dependent on a banker to loan you money in case they stop loaning money for whatever reason, for at least a little bit of time.
Yeah. Well, there's a really good lesson in there about the time to prepare for the next storm is not during the storm.
No doubt.
It's before. It's doing the things now, again, being strategic about how you take care of yourself, how you take care of the business. And that goes back to the strategy, right? We're talking about strategic planning here, which means you've got to have an idea of, okay, what are we doing in the business? What are the priorities to grow or as a part of the exit that you're putting together, so that you can know what is it that the business is going to need. And at the same time, what do I need personally in order to make these plans happen?
You need to have a checkup every year. Knowing the value, start with the value. ScaleToSell.com/value. Get your opinion of value, where you stand today. What does the market say your business is worth today? The other thing, another way to take equity off the table that some of you might maybe not considered is that sometimes, even though you might, let's say you're 3 years out, 5 years out, trying to time the market, you've heard Jeff Snell or M&A experts say, it's kind of like timing the stock market. Good luck on that one, because you never know what might happen to derail it. But there's companies out there right now, there is trillions of dollars of money of businesses looking for opportunities to buy into something. And maybe you're not ready to exit altogether. Maybe somebody writes you a big enough check. Today's the day, because you'd be surprised. Or maybe you say, we find you a private equity firm, a family office, and they'll write you a significant check and you'll sell 20% of the business, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Let's say you sell 70% of the business. Take some pressure off you. Got some chunk of money in your pocket. We help minimize the tax and put it into a diversified portfolio. So you've de-risked your business a lot right there. But this new firm coming in got deep pockets. And they can take your business to a level that you've never imagined before. So the remaining 20, 30, whatever percent of the business can be worth many times over in the future. So although you think you know all the exits, and maybe you're going to sell it to your kids, there's a risk there too. Most of you are not. You've heard us talk before. You're not going to get all your money up front. You're going to be the bank. You're going to finance it for them. And so you want to do some things. You really need to do some things to harvest equity now, because you may not, if you've ever had, I'm fortunate that I haven't had this situation, but I've had many clients out there. I'm a financial advisor. Well, they've had a house and they were helping their kids out and they were renting it to the kids. And the first time the kids got jammed up financially or whatever, they go, Dad, Mom, I can't pay you this month, or I can't pay you what I owe you. I'll give you $200 instead of $1,500. Well, my point is, if your largest asset is that business, and the business is you're doing an internal sell, and you're the bank, there's a risk to that. So you probably have an even more need to harvest equity up front than you do if you're going to do an external sell where you're going to get a big check and walk away maybe over a year or 2 or 5 years, whatever it might be. So be intentional, have a game plan, recover some money, be intentional about pushing money aside. Think about the way you finance things. Our tax planning team might be able to help reduce your costs, and that alone might go a long way to helping you put more money away for the future. Well, Steve, I'm maxing out my 401k. Is that enough? Right? You took years where you weren't funded. Now you're maxing it out. But how much money do you need when you retire? You're paying yourself $300,000 a year. If you add all the other perks in there, it's really $400,000 or better. And you're going to sell the business for $8 million after taxes and then whatever. Let's say you walk away with $6 million. $6 million is not going to produce $400,000 a year in income in retirement. It will, but not for very long, right? So these are the things that you don't think about, but working with our team to help protect and grow what you've got and help you exit on your own terms. It's what we don't know. It's what we don't know that can come back to either haunt us, or even not haunt us, but hey, where could we have been had we known some of these things back in 2024, 25?
Missed out on an opportunity to make it better. What you were just talking about there, of the different decisions and how the trajectory that you see your business going, and maybe how handing it off to the next generation, whether that's internally, externally, whatever, and the impact of that, I think just shows the crucial nature of what we mean by strategic planning, that the decisions that we make are not done in isolation. They really do impact so many facets of the health and future success of the business, as well as our own financial plans, our teams, all of it are impacted by these things, and they need to be looked at in concert. And that's why having a team behind you that knows what to look for, that knows how to direct our thinking and understanding of a situation to consider all the options and make sure that you're choosing the best one for you. It really is a critical decision to make. And again, like we keep saying, it starts with knowing where you're at. It starts with knowing your value.
We have a team of experts that can help grow the value and or harvest the equity when and if you're ready. One other thing when it comes to internal self, that's your intentions. There are programs, loan programs out there right now. If you're gonna sell it to your kids, there's programs out there that we can harvest some equity and get them maybe not 100% financing, but at least a lot of it. You should take at least, let's say your business is worth $5 million and you're going to finance the whole thing, maybe we get a loan and take out $2.5 million in equity, and you finance the other $2.5 million over 5 or 10 years or whatever time frame. You lower your risk right there by being intentional and harvest some equity now, or when you do go to exit here in a year or two. And in the business, your kids might take the business to a level you could have never imagined.
And we would love for that to be the case.
The parent would love that as well, because the business has become like your kids because you put so much blood, sweat, and tears into them. But what if they can't? What if they don't? What if something happens? Now you're back in the business at age 80, whatever, and it may not be there for you to, may not be physically able for you to, or mentally, or you probably just don't want to do it. But so many opportunities here, and these are just a few of the talking points to get you thinking about harvesting equity now and being intentional about it, not to jam the business up, but just to, where do I need to be? How much do I need the business to be valued at when I exit? What does my personal assets look like now? How can I build as I'm building up the value of the business, how can I also build up my personal assets? We kind of wrap them all into one, but they're really separate. Personal assets, business assets. You're not going to sell your personal assets. I think you're going to harvest those, but you're going to sell all or part of the business in some form or fashion.
So again, go to scaletosell.com/value or click the link there in the show notes. It'll take you right to that page and see. We've really simplified the process. We've got a very qualified team behind us doing those evaluations, getting those opinions of value for you so that you can have clarity about what your business is worth and what that means for you and your business. And again, right now it's free. And so take advantage of that to get that annual checkup, so to speak, like Steve was talking about. Scaletosell.com/value or click the link in the show notes. Until next time, keep scaling.
Thank you for listening to Scale to Sell with Adam Burton and Steve Burton. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.scaletosell.com or give us a call at 757-313-4080. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Scale to Sell. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing, tax, legal, or other advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified professionals with any questions you may have regarding your personal or professional plans. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome.